What would happen if Luka Doncic got traded? Luka Doncic has become one of the best basketball players in the NBA in less than 2 seasons. He's averaging a near double-double in his sophomore season after winning the NBA's Rookie of the Year award easily last season. But what if Luka wasn't a Maverick? What if the Hawks drafted Luka? Would his stat line be the same? Would the Hawks be a contender in the East? What about the Kings? Why didn't they select Luka? And would the Kings have been different with him? Which team, other than the Mavericks, would he shine with if traded? The answers are unknown, but we tried to answer the unknown. Keep watching to see what would happen if Luka Doncic got traded. If the Hawks drafted Luka. The Hawks have already admitted that they would have taken Luka Doncic with the 3rd overall pick of the 2018 NBA draft. However, the Mavericks gave up enough assets to lure the Hawks into a trade where the Hawks ended up taking Trae Young with the 5th overall selection. Luka Doncic was the NBA Rookie of the Year last season, and it wasn't even close. LeBron James spoke highly of Luka. Kevin Durant spoke highly of Luka, and Steve Kerr even had some great things to say about Luka. The Hawks liked what they could have received if they drafted Luka with the 3rd overall selection, but they passed him up in a deal with the Hawks. Before getting into the why, here's the full draft night deal. Dallas sent the 5th overall pick, which was Trae Young, and a protected 1st-round pick in 2019 to the Hawks for Doncic. If the Mavericks were picking in the top 5 in 2019, they will keep the pick. Otherwise, it was going to be conveyed to the Hawks. The same protection applied in 2020. If it goes beyond that, the pick is only protected through the top 3 picks in 2021 and 22, and unprotected in 2023. They didn't have to worry about the future picks, as they selected Cameron Reddish with the 10th selection of the 2019 NBA draft. That pick would have been the Mavericks selection. Here's why the deal was made. So we felt like going back a couple spots, we were still going to get a player we really liked, Atlanta general manager Travis Schlenk said. One of the things that we had said all along is that it's going to take another 1st-round pick, he said. Not a lot of people know this. If we would have stayed at 3, we would have taken Luka. We had worked with his agent, and he had did a physical for us that morning in New York. I was on the phone with Bill Duffy, his agent, telling him our press conference was going to be Monday, and Bill was ecstatic because Phoenix was going to be there Friday, and he had DeAndre Anton, so he was going to be able to do both press conferences. But then Dallas came in an hour or so before the draft. I had told them all along that it was going to take another lottery pick for us to slide back. That's when the conversations got started. For us, what made it make sense was our analytics stuff was predicting Dallas to finish 8th this year. Right now, I think they're 10th. So I give those guys a lot of credit for being pretty on top of it. To be able to add 2 lottery picks this year with a player that ended up being Trae, who we're extremely excited about, and he's had a great rookie season, that made sense to us. I've always taken the strategy with the draft to use a baseball strategy. The more swings you get, the more chances you have to get a hit. To be able to take 1 lottery pick and essentially turn it into 2, that made sense to us. The Mavericks watched Luka destroy during his rookie season and wanted to start adding pieces around him. Luka wasn't gelling with the players that the Mavericks were sending out on the court. The Mavericks later traded for Kristaps Porzingis from the Knicks and shipped off 4 of 5 starters, including Dennis Smith Jr., Wesley Matthews, DeAndre Jordan, and Harrison Barnes. When the Mavericks washed away their starting lineup, team owner Mark Cuban vowed to fans that the Mavericks weren't tanking. It was the Mavericks' way of trying to hold on to their pick for next season. It didn't exactly work out as planned. However, could you imagine an NBA with Kristaps Porzingis still on the Knicks? Dennis Smith Jr. getting starting minutes with the Mavericks alongside Trae Young and potentially Cameron Reddish or another lottery pick? Luka would get to play in the East with the Hawks and have a much easier time with a less star-studded conference than the West. Trae Young is currently getting the pass with his Hawks playing poorly, but he still became an NBA All-Star starter. If that trade never happened, could you imagine? Doncic will have a LeBron-like career? It seems like Luka can make anyone better around him. Any team that includes Luka will be the ultimate winner. That's the LeBron James effect. If Luka Doncic was traded to any team under .500, he would likely instantly transform the team to over .500 and compete for the playoffs. While Kristaps Porzingis has become the 2nd start next to Luka, he's been injured for most of this season and hasn't given the Mavericks what they had hoped for just yet. Currently, Luka has been sidelined with an ankle injury. Porzingis has stepped up without Luka, but hasn't stepped up with Luka. The Mavericks aren't a top contending team without Luka at full strength. Luka is averaging 28.8 points, 9.5 rebounds, rebounds and 8.7 assists in the first half of his sophomore season. In LeBron's sophomore season with the Cavaliers, he averaged 27.2 points, 7.4 rebounds, and 7.2 assists per game. The Cavs went 42-40 on the season and missed the playoffs as a 9 seed. Luka Doncic has Dallas sitting at 31-19 on the year. While the Mavericks do have more talent than LeBron had in 2004 to 2005, Doncic has proven that he's capable of turning any team into a contender just like LeBron. Without a doubt, Luka will not be traded anytime soon. He will absolutely never get traded. The only way Luka leaves Dallas is through free agency. It's too early for that. The Mavs were a lottery pick last year. Look at them now. Put Luka on any under .500 team and see what he could accomplish. The Warriors, Knicks, Hornets, Cavaliers, Wizards, and Suns would all be in the playoffs if Luka was on their team. The Kings. Vlad Divic's dislike of Luka Doncic's dad may have kept Kings from drafting him. That theory was floated on Adrian Wojnarowski's podcast by ESPN's Tim McMahon, who said Divac, the Kings' general manager, passed on the Dallas triple-double machine and emerging MVP candidate with the number 2 pick in the 2018 draft, at least partially due to a problem with Doncic's father. My understanding is that Divac being so close to Luka and knowing his dad so well factored into their decision. McMahon, who covers the Mavericks for ESPN, said on the Woj Pod, basically, he didn't think a whole lot of Luka's dad, and the whole like father like son, well, no, this is a different dude. You messed that one up, lad. After the Suns took Arizona big man DeAndre Ayton with the number 1 overall pick in last year's draft, the Kings bypassed Doncic and selected Duke forward Marvin Bagley III. The 6'11 Bagley, who has missed all but 1 game this season with a thumb injury, made the NBA All-Rookie First Team last year, averaging 14.9 points and 7.6 rebounds per game. Doncic captured the league's Rookie of the Year award, however with 21.2 points, 7.8 boards, and 6.0 assists per game. Those numbers for the 20-year-old Slovenian have risen to MVP caliber levels through 16 games this season. A near triple-double per game with 30.6 points, 10.1 rebounds, and 9.8 assists. To stir the pot, just how good could the Kings have been if they had Luka Doncic on their team? The backcourt would consist of De'Aaron Fox, Buddy Hield, and Luka Doncic. Hield is averaging 20.3 points, 5 rebounds, and 3.1 assists per game this season, while Fox is averaging 20.2 points per game, 4.3 rebounds, and 7 assists per game. Now, Sacramento isn't the most exciting place to play basketball, but with those 3 pieces, would the Kings have been able to lure another big superstar to come join the trio? The 2018-2019 free agency class consisted of LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Paul George, and many other great forwards that could have propelled this team to an ultimate super team. Or the Kings could have found a couple trade partners to take Harrison Barnes off their books by also getting rid of some of their picks. It would have been worth it if the Kings landed on any of those premier superstars. A trade to the Spurs. We know how much the Mavericks like their European players. Dirk Nowitzki became a legend for the Mavs and played there his entire career. They don't make him like Dirk anymore. But what about other teams that love European players? That team in San Antonio, 4 hours south from Dallas. The Spurs. What if Luka Doncic was traded to the Spurs to be coached by one of the best head coaches that the NBA has ever seen, in Greg Popovich? Luka Doncic is like Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili combined. The averages when adding Parker and Ginobili's career together: 28.8 points, 6.2 rebounds, 9.4 assists, and 2 steals per game. Those 2 players are just one of Luka Doncic. Imagine what Luka could do if traded to the Spurs. He would be on pace to score more than 33,500 points in his NBA career. If he scored over 33,500 points in his career, Luka would only be trailing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Karl Malone, LeBron James, and Kobe Bryant. Oh, and Luka Doncic would have 8 championships in an average of 17 seasons in the NBA, and win at least 1 Finals MVP. Doncic is also well on his way to at least 8 All-Star games that Parker and Ginobili achieved during their time with the Spurs. Speaking with ESPN The Magazine's Seth Wickersham, Coach Pop had complimented the work ethic of foreign kids at the expense of Americans. The Spurs are not in the business of worrying about the demands on a student-athlete's time, and saw it as a plus that guys like Ginobili and Parker had been playing club basketball since they were teenagers, schooled by accredited coaches, the 10,000-hour rule brought to the hardwood. Popovich's assessment of foreign players is that they are fundamentally harder working than most American kids. Anyone who is surprised by Popovich's train of thought hasn't followed him too closely over the years. He has always had an affinity for foreign athletes and apparently their work ethic. 9 of the San Antonio Spurs' 15 players from the 2013 season grew up and played overseas, which was an NBA record. Pop's unwavering belief that American athletes develop a misplaced sense of entitlement has led him to seek talent elsewhere, outside the country, where more diligent talent awaits. Pop often charted into what was considered unknown or worthless territory before anyone else did, looking for stars in a pool of players that were considered incapable. A lack of defense and a refusal to learn the English language were the stigmas that once plagued, and to an extent still do, anyone who played outside of the United States. Led by Popovich, the Spurs have become essential contrarians, seeing the world through a completely conflicting lens. The conclusions Popovich and the Spurs have drawn are pretty direct. Playing their way towards a 5th championship of the Coach Pop era, they make no apologies. Whatever they're thinking, whatever they're doing, it's working. In this case, Popovich might be right. Many trainers, general managers, and scouters can attest to Luka's work ethic. Luka works hard to become the best basketball player he can be. He's had workouts that have lasted over a length of 48-minute basketball game and beyond. He's practiced twice a day. He's got a strong mentality, and that could be from his European roots. The Spurs, in 2020, are struggling this season. The first season where Greg Popovich has really struggled to bring a winning team to San Antonio. This would have been the perfect time to add Doncic to the team. If only.